Good morning, everybody. Um, we'll wait for just one more minute. There's a couple of people that we don't want to see in the lineup here. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to the sixth annual Professional Certification Program. On behalf of the Society of Product Safety Professionals, sponsor of the certification program, Virginia Tech, our university partner, represented this morning by Alan Abrahams, who is with us, and ADK, which develops and delivers these important programs. Welcome to our final 2024 program. I know from emails and conversations that you all have been anxious to start the 2024 certification program, as have all of us who work to build this program. So let's get going. My pleasure this morning is to introduce Patty Adair. Patty recently retired from the CPSC after a 20-year plus successful career at the CPSC. She was director of the risk management group and was responsible for consumer product risk management in 6 program areas: chemicals, flammability, combustion, children's, electrical, and mechanical. Now, it's important to understand that Patty is the perfect person for introducing our keynote speaker. She's a Virginia Tech graduate, brought her doll with her, with a career of protecting consumers. Welcome back, Patty. It's yours.
All right, thanks so much. All right, let me get started here. So I want to first say good morning, Hokies. You all may not know it yet, but you're Hokies. You're in a Virginia Tech related course. And what is a Hokie? Well, as Don said, it's not really a doll, but I brought my Hokie bird this morning down from my bedroom. So everybody could see it. So you are Hokies. And if you're curious, even more curious about Hokies, go online and learn about Virginia Tech some more, and even watch the beginning of a football game where Metallica is playing Enter Sandman, and you will be completely immersed in Hokiedom. So this is an incredible journey that you're about to embark on. It's a collaboration, as Don said, between Virginia Tech, the Society of Product Safety Professionals, and a lot of cooperation from the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. My name is Patty Adair. I'm a Virginia Tech alum, and I have been retired from CPSC for a little over a year. So now I'm like a double alum. I came to CPSC as a textile technologist and retired as the director of the risk management group. My undergraduate degree from Virginia Tech was in textile science and fashion merchandising. At Virginia Tech, we learned all about the CPSC and textile flammability regulations. But of course, the Flammable Fabrics Act was much, much newer back then. It wasn't like kind of an old regulation like it is now. I'm grateful for the curriculum, that the curriculum at Virginia Tech was very heavy on science and technology. That's how Virginia Tech is. It's very much an engineering type of school. Preparing for this, I went through the class roster, and it was really fascinating. We've got really a great group of students here, including international students. I see you, Sweden and Canada out there. And all of you have so much experience that you bring to the course and your fellow students. I hope you also get the important networking opportunities during this course and are able to keep in touch going forward. So when we arrive here today, we all came here with various experiences and perspectives, but I think we all agree that we all support product safety. And that's kind of like a no-brainer, right? We are all consumers, we all want safe products. And from a company perspective, recalls are expensive and they hurt your brand. So that needs to be avoided. You here as the students, you're the good actors. You're taking time from your busy lives and to enhance your knowledge and make important connections that will surely benefit your organizations in your careers. As a proud Virginia Tech alum, I'm honored to welcome you all to this course and to introduce CPSC Chair Alex Hoen. But before I introduce the chair, I'm going to take a few minutes of my time to hopefully impart a few words of wisdom from 20 years at the CPSC. I came to the CPSC from the textile industry. I got involved in voluntary standards, mostly in textile and apparel flammability. I worked for the American Textile Manufacturers and the National Cotton Council. I became very active in ISO and ASTM. During those years, the CPSC was working on regulations for upholstered furniture and mattress flammability. In my role with the textile industry, I met with CPSC staff and commissioners and discussed, argued, whatever, on the various regulatory proposals that were going on. And I learned there, and after I went to the CPSC, that looking from the perspective from the outside looking in, it can sometimes be very difficult to know why the agency acts as it does. So it's important to know the CPSC's governing statutes that are relevant to your product area. For example, for me, the Flammable Fabrics Act was very important in my product areas. So voluntary standards, get involved, ASTM, NFPA, ISO committees, if you aren't already. I could see by your bios that many of you already participate in voluntary standards. I know it can be difficult to find time for voluntary standards. Work with the pressures you already face in your job. But your management needs to understand that voluntary standards gives you a competitive edge. You have an edge over your competitors if you are involved in the committees and subcommittees in your product area. It's like having insider knowledge. You have to be patient with standards development. I wouldn't say that it's always riveting work until it actually is riveting. When something really happens, you want to be in the room, right, where your standards for your products are being developed. Use your knowledge and your influence to work with your colleagues and other stakeholders to develop the very best product safety standards to protect Americans' consumers. I know Jacqueline Campbell, from the Voluntary Standards Coordinator from CPSC, will be talking to you a lot about that. I'm sure others will too. Risk assessment. How does the CPSC determine which products to focus on for standards work, regulatory work? Where can I find that information on what the agency is working on? Hint here, always consult the agency operating plan. It's all in there and it's available on the website. The agency's performance budget request, which lays out the staff's plan for future work, is also a treasure trove of information. I think many stakeholders are not aware of it. It can give you a very good indication of the direction of standards development and agency priorities for the next few years. And the agency operating plan and the performance budget requests all flow, of course, from its strategic plan. So there's a 2023 to 2026 strategic plan now. I suggest it's a good idea to make yourself familiar with these agency documents. And of course, everything revolves around the data. Get to know CPSC's public-facing databases and how to retrieve and analyze that data. Okay, it's my pleasure to introduce the chair of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, Alexander Hoen. You have Alex's bio in your course materials, so I'm not going to read it to you. It's kind of silly. But from the perspective of, I just want to speak from the perspective of former CPSC staffer. We've had some great and some not so great commissioners and chairmen over the years. It's always great, always good when the chairman comes in with real CPSC experience, or even frankly knows that the CPSC exists. I know that sounds silly, but you would think that a politically appointed CPSC commissioner would have product safety experience, but you would be wrong. We've had some real doozies over the years. The CPSC got really lucky when Alex was appointed as chair by President Biden. Alex was involved in the drafting of the 2008 Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act, or the CPSIA, which increased CPSC's authority and resources tremendously. It was really transformative legislation, which it dramatically changed the nature of the CPSC. If you were there at the time, if you were on staff in 2008 when the CPSIA hit everyone's desk, it was really a crazy time in a way, but it really changed everything and gave us so much more resources, more authority, more we could do. And it was really transformative. So in addition to his wide breadth of knowledge on the agency's governing statute, Alex also brings to the job a calm demeanor, always taking facts and policies into account in decision-making. There is a real place in a regulatory agency for a calm and thoughtful presence during what can often feel like contentious and uncivil times. The CPSC and the product safety ecosystem is really lucky to have Alex in the chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to please introduce CPSC Chair Alex Hoen, and I want to say one more time, let's go Hokies.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks. I appreciate the very kind introduction. And I would say you are greatly missed at the CPSC, but I'm really glad that you're continuing to engage in the product safety side of things. I'm also what's not in my bio is, though I'm not a Hokie, I do have a deep connection to Virginia Tech, or VPI, as I knew it. My grandfather taught as a physics professor at Virginia Tech way back when. So he actually got his master's degree in the 30s when he came over from China as a foreign exchange student, basically. And then after World War II, brought his family over, and they were I think the only Chinese family in the whole Blacksburg area for a while. So I grew up going to Blacksburg. I grew up walking around on the campus, going to they had a great dairy farm. They would be turning out ice cream and other things. So very, very fond memories, although it was a lot smaller then than it is now. Now it's gigantic. And then I had a couple nieces who went to Virginia Tech as well. So I'm pleased to be part of this event today, not only because of the work that you're doing and what we can learn from today, but also from the affiliation with Virginia Tech. So thanks also to the Society of Product Safety Professionals for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to speak to a group of individuals gathered for the purpose of advancing product safety. Because we're here to make products safer in the end of the day. And every time we take actions to improve safety, we're protecting the public from injury or death and changing lives for the better. As a community of product safety professionals, we really have to rely on each other's knowledge and expertise to help establish our goals and accomplish our goals. And what we learn through this program and how you foster connections you're making, it's going to benefit you and your colleagues, but also the public more generally. Now, most of you are probably familiar to some degree with the CPSC and our mission to protect Americans from unreasonable risks of injury and death from consumer products. The agency was established by Congress about 50 years ago. And to say that the product safety landscape has changed since then would be an understatement. In the past 5 decades, our mission has grown to encompass more than 15,000 categories of consumer products, representing about $2 trillion in commerce annually. And as you can imagine, with our staff of just around 550 people, we have to rely heavily upon our stakeholders and partners to help fulfill our mission. And to follow up on what Patty was saying before, I think that a lot of that is heavy reliance on the voluntary standards work that's out there. The agency engages in that. And we work both under our statute, we're required to look at voluntary standards, but also it is a force multiplier for us as well. And important that we often look to what's going on there, we participate in it, build upon it, sometimes urge changes. So I agree with Patty. Participation in those voluntary standards is very useful for you and the agency. Then I want to start today by sharing a little bit about where the agency is today, talk about the direction we're heading in the near future, then open it up for questions and conversations, because I've honestly always think that's the most useful. You can ask me whatever you want, and I'd be curious to know about sort of the work that you've been doing as well. So since I became chair in the fall of 2021, the agency's been active. We conducted over 800 recalls. Our goal with recalls is to make it as simple as possible for consumers to receive a notification and then to act upon the recall. Direct notice is often the most effective tools that the industry has to get consumers to take action. And to that end, we've been working with recalling firms, as well as retailers and online marketplaces that are often the point of contact for consumers to provide direct notice in a way that gets consumers' attentions. This could be a email, a text, a call, a notification through an app, or a combination of these strategies. And what has been interesting is seeing how companies are becoming more and more creative. And I remember one smart TV company that provided an on-screen notice of a recall related to its TV stand. And another company was using the IoT connectivity to actually effectuate a recall remedy for a connected device. That was interesting, partially because if you didn't decide to connect the device, then you had to be notified and send a dongle. It could be put into the device. But if you were connected, then the change happened basically automatically. And I appreciate the companies thinking broadly about how to address these hazards in people's homes. Unfortunately, as Patty said, you all are the good actors. There are times when companies don't respond to the CPSC about a request for a recall or don't offer adequate remedies. And often these are overseas manufacturers who have no presence in the US. During my tenure, the CPSC has addressed this by by providing the public with unilateral warnings about these products. You know, these warnings were a rare occurrence at the commission in the past, but now are an important part of our process when we encounter a company that stops responding to our outreach about a violative product. In my time as chair, we've issued well over 70 of these warnings. The need for this new approach has grown over time, partially because of the rise of e-commerce. Consumers are buying more and more products from foreign manufacturers through online marketplaces, as opposed to the old days where you just walk down the street and go into a store. And too many of these overseas manufacturers that are on these online marketplaces fail to prioritize safety and refuse to take responsibility for defective products that are shipped into the US. Moreover, the online marketplaces often take insufficient steps to vet the third-party sellers and products being sold on their sites. To try and address this issue, CPSC does have a dedicated eSafe team that surveils the online marketplace for recalled, banned, and violated products. And in my time as chair, this team has initiated over 110,000 takedown requests to online marketplaces. We're going to continue with this good work, but I strongly believe that the burden of finding these hazardous products and reporting them shouldn't rest on CPSC alone. The online marketplaces really are the best place to put systems in place to stop dangerous products from being visible to consumers in the first place. And prioritizing product safety on an online marketplace not only makes it safe for consumers, it also provides a more level playing field for reputable manufacturers. Too often, the prices of companies that prioritize safety are undercut by fly-by-night online sellers who cut corners and that are the ones who disappear after a defect is found. You know, a perfect example of this is a marketplace for replacement lithium-ion batteries for e-bikes. We all know OEM battery prices are significantly higher than many of the generics that you find online. And as a general matter, they're also safer. You know, however, consumers who are buying the generic products presume they're safe because they're being purchased on a well-known marketplace. And, frankly, they're cheaper and people are looking for a better deal. Unfortunately, we're seeing too many fires associated with these poorly manufactured and incompatible batteries. And that's why the CPSC has written to major retailers and online marketplaces to urge them to sell only batteries that have been demonstrated to meet applicable UL standards. Another area that CPSC and Congress has been active is updating safety standards for certain products. And that's another area of the work that we do. In the past few years, CPSC has issued new regulations related to high-powered magnets, clothing storage unit stability, adult portable bed rails, button cell batteries, and crib mattresses. We've also been implementing congressional bans on crib bumpers and infant sleepers. The development of safety standards for a range of other products as infant cushions, nursing pillows, portable generators, and table saws is also continuing at the Commission. When the CPSC puts out a new rule, our expectations for the industry to come in compliance consistent with the timeframes laid out in the regulations. But I also recognize that for some businesses, especially those that are small or new to selling in the US, those learning our rules and regulations can be overwhelming. To that end, I did want to highlight another team we have at the CPSC, which is the Office of Small Business Ombudsman. Their role is to provide resources to small businesses at every step along the way. The team developed something called the regulatory robot, which helps guide businesses step by step through the design manufacturing process to make sure their products are developed with compliance in mind. It is available online at cpsc.gov, and we've heard tremendously positive feedback from industry about this tool, and it's been used over 240,000 times since it was developed in 2018. For you all, the regulatory robot is a great first place for you to look when you have a question about the application of federal product safety laws to your products. Finally, another challenging area where we made stride is product safety education outreach to consumers. That's another role that the CPSC has, which is getting safety information out to the public. And it's not just about recalls, it's about how to use certain products safely or to prevent harm. So this comes in many forms, from anti-drowning campaigns in the summer, to safety messaging in the wake of hurricanes, to fireworks safety around the 4th of July. Since I've become chair, the CPSC has reached out to consumers and reached them more than 10 billion times with safety messages. But we're also trying to align our outreach efforts to the communities that are most at risk. And the reality is that there are deep disparities based on race, ethnicity, and geographic location with respect to the injuries and deaths in numerous categories of consumer product safety hazards, from pool drownings to ATVs to infant deaths. So CPSC is targeting messages to communities in ways that are more likely to be heard and acted upon. And this includes a heavy, mean social media account that is drawn a fairly large following for federal safety agency. And in the end, I encourage all of you to think creatively about how you can advance product safety in your organizations as well. Whether it's reporting potential defects, getting ahead of rule deadlines, or proactively educating consumers about safety measures, we're actually all in this together. And you are obviously enrolled in this program because you recognize the value of safety and want to bring this knowledge back to your company and back to consumers. And you know that safety is good for consumers, but it's also good for your business. And we at the CPSC are here to be a partner and a resource in that process. So thank you for listening to me. And I would love to take time to both answer questions and to learn a bit more about you who have decided to take this certification program as well. So Patty, what the best way is to open it up, open the floor up. Or I can MC and just ask anybody if you have questions, and then you should just take yourself off mute and ask away.
I know we don't have a shy bunch, so who's just going to go first?
Missing a tooth?
I just had one like practical question. Like all you said you were about like 500 people working with CPSC. Are
About,
they
yeah.
all are they all in like the same office or are you spread out all over the country?
We have our main headquarters in Maryland, just outside of DC. And there's actually two. There's the location where we have a lot of our lawyers, and then we have a testing lab, which is a little farther out, and that is a facility where we do test products that are coming in from overseas or for as we're examining standards. And then we have a about a third of the agency that's spread out across the country. And they're kind of in two different groups. One is investigators. They'll go around and they will hear about an incident or will hear about an incident through multiple means, and they'll go and take a look and say, hey, there's a death by carbon monoxide, or there is a lithium-ion battery fire. They'll go and they'll work with the local authorities to investigate those. They also do some educational outreach to folks as well. And then we have another team that is at the ports that go and work with customs and border to be able to scan products as they're coming in, really based off on a risk methodology, both focusing on sort of the highest risk profiles combined with oftentimes we focus a lot on things that we have standards for. There are many products that we don't have mandatory standards for, but certainly for the ones that we do, those are ones that we are able to monitor at the borders much better.
Thank you.
Of course.
Do you always, sorry, I just add on to that, like the work that you're doing, like are you also doing like audits? I mean, you decide on certain product types and make audits in stores, or I mean, you do it online, just looking around, but you also do it in the stores, have those organized big audits?
Yes, the short answer is yes. Obviously, with the number of people we have, that we have to prioritize what we're doing. We will both go into stores, purchase products to be able to see if there's problems out there. There are also times when, especially when new rules are being implemented. So recently, we have a new standard for dressers and their stability. So as that was coming into effect, and after it came into effect, we will stop by manufacturers' facilities, do an inspection, talk to them about what's going on, and so those kinds of manufacturer visits are available to us and are done in-store sampling as well as online sampling. I think Nate was also going to say something.
Sure. Yeah, Alex, thanks for joining us. I'm looking forward to this training and just honored that you're here with us as the chair of the CPSC. That means a lot. I'm Nate Mao. I lead the product safety group at Whirlpool. As you know, full line of products sold here in the United States, both small and major appliances, and of course around the world. My team, I work directly with your compliance team on occasion, and then I have a team of engineers that sit in technical committees for UL and other committees looking to drive standards. And one of the things we're trying to prioritize and focus on is looking at that next generation of standards, right? How do we what's the next transformative change for cooking products, right? To reduce injuries, in the future. And of course, we have a team that's looking at, monitoring the field for potential risks. And so we're really trying to prioritize, how do we drive that next level of standard that makes sense for consumers, right? And protects them from injury. As the commission looks at, future resource allocation for enforcement or compliance versus standards, how do you weigh that, the allocation of those resources, and what do you see, going into the future for that?
Sure. Largely, most of our work is based off of the data that we're seeing. It's Where are the trend lines? Where are we seeing injuries? Where are we seeing deaths? Um, and some of it is a continuity of the work that we've done in the past. Obviously, we look generally at more vulnerable populations first. So we focus a lot on children. We focus on the elderly as well, because not only do we see the deaths there, but also those are populations that are more likely to get injured, and the injuries can be more severe, and they're less able to protect themselves in the process. But we do a number of reports each year on a broad range of topics as well. We have a fire report. We have reports on ATVs continue to have a large number of deaths and injuries associated with them. So we do reports on ATVs, on micromobility devices, and collect the data through a variety of different sources. We have affiliations with a number of different hospitals across the country to gather product safety injury data. That's our NICE system. We do it in a way that we can look at it from a statistically significant perspective to be able to track overall deaths and injuries and be able to flag if there are trends coming up. We obviously have information coming in from manufacturers and retailers as well. There are requirements under the law that if there are um, incidents out there that meet a certain standard, they're supposed to be reported to us. We look at those not only for specific issues like, is this product potentially defective, but also, are we seeing a lot of incidents in certain areas that sort of drive more of a regulatory approach as opposed to a one-off approach that you would see in a recall situation. Then we get information in from consumers as well. That's done both through our online website, but also every year as we're looking to figure out our next year's agendas, we do a public meeting in which anybody can come and talk to us. So industry can come and talk to us about what they're seeing. Individual consumers can come talk to us about what they're concerned about. I think part of that drove a lot of the lithium ion fires uh, focus that we have now, because we were getting input from people ranging from manufacturers to the fire commissioner up in New York City to individuals. But it can also drive specific, more targeted issues as well, such as trying to address the dangers of water beads for small children. And so I think it's a combination of the data that's out there that's being collected from a number of different sources. The activities are going in the voluntary standards, because that can also be helpful to us to be able to understand what's going on, as well as input from these public ways. And to be honest as well, I mean, we also hear from Congress on issues as well on a regular basis. And if there's larger focus there, either we're told to do so by Congress through a law, or we hear that is of importance to lawmakers.
Okay, thanks, Alex, for that. Without a doubt, there's a proliferation of products in our country, and proliferation of online marketplaces a real challenge, certainly the budget that you guys have. So thanks for that answer. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Hi, I'll go next. My name is Rhonda Powell, and I work with Newell Brands, who have a variety of products that we sell across major segments. But I mainly support the writing business, which we just generally call it, but things like writing instruments, Sharpie pens, Papermate pens, Elmer's glue, which a lot of every child has used in their lifetime, I'm sure.
I thought you were going to say eaten, but
Eaten, spread all over their hands and peeled it off, all of that stuff that we are very much aware of. So again, we're trying to ensure safety for sure for a lot of children and school-age children and that kind of thing. So I would just generally ask it sounds like the online marketplace is probably a huge challenge for you guys. Is the new e-filing of certificates of compliance and things like that, is that one of the efforts to try to hope curtail some of the products that are coming into the US and ensure their safety?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know, we are in the process of doing a rulemaking with respect to what we're calling e-filing. It's focused on making sure that we have the information about products that are subject to our standards before they come into the country, to make sure that we have that information in a way that can be timely, that we can both streamline the process for sort of reputable manufacturers so that there's not delays at the ports, but able to prioritize potential hazards at the ports, or even when we stop products and they, in the future, they don't have the proper certifications, they don't have proper paperwork, to be able to know, like, we have to flag that. That's a regulatory violation as well. So right now, we don't get that information electronically, and we're looking to find ways to move in that direction. And a large one of the drivers of that is we've seen the shift to more and more products coming in under a de minimis standard. So these are products being shipped into the country valued less than $800, and very little paperwork is associated with those. And so it's very little transparency for us to be able to figure out what's being shipped, whether they're safe, whether there's a problem coming in. And so as we are trying to make ourselves more efficient, the process more efficient for everybody, it is designed also to be able to say, all right, how do we, with the limited number of people have, focus on the highest risks that are out there so that we can prioritize our efforts and maximally increase safety. So we're excited about the program. We know it's a sort of a big shift for industry as well. So that appropriate amount of time needs to be put in to make sure that the process can be done, that's working correctly, and for industry to be able to comply with it. But I do think it will be extremely important in even be able to track things in the future too. And I know we've had problems with products and not knowing how to track back to, like, what labs did the testing for those products or was required. All that information will be gathered together in one place and be able to quickly do some forensics as well if necessary. But I would also say, going back to where I started, I do think a lot of the obligations and responsibility should rest with a lot of the online platforms as well. They have a whole range of products, and not to say I buy on them all the time. So it's not like I don't use the platforms, but they're in a much better position and honestly have much more resources than we do to sort of do that first cut as to, are these reputable sellers? All the terms and services generally say all the products sold must comply with applicable laws, regulations, standards that are out there. But while they are very good at being reactive when we point something out, the proactive side of it and making sure that those their own terms and standards are being complied with before a product is listed is oftentimes lacking. So trying to get that safety shift in their minds as well, I think, will be important. We don't deal with, counterfeits aren't our issue, but oftentimes when you see that there's, a counterfeit UL mark or a counterfeit, ASTM mark, that is not a sign of a safety risk as well. So it's trying to figure out how to level the playing field, and so that people, when they go online, are buying in the same way that they would buy at the local store and have the same level of safety, because they have that expectation. It's just not always there.
Okay, I guess that means it's my turn. So first of all, thank you for being here. I really appreciate the work that the CPSC does. As a product safety consultant, I think I'm on Regulatory Robot and NICE database and saferproducts.gov probably every day. So I really appreciate those tools. And additionally, I do a lot of work with ASTM voluntary standards for juvenile products, and I just want to commend your staff for the collaboration in those, standards. They are a very valuable resource to us when we are working on developing new safety standards. You kind of did answer my question actually, inadvertently through Rhonda's question, which was about whether or not the CPSC has a strategy for counterfeit products. I do a lot of work with car seat technicians and helping families get their, car seats fitted and properly harnessed and all of that through my work as president of Safe Kids Utah. And we've seen an uptick in counterfeit seats. But it sounds like the CPSC is sort of taking a stance that is more on the platforms to sort of regulate and control. Is that right?
So I would say we're focused on the safety side of things. So to the extent that product is counterfeit, to the extent that there is a, fake Gucci bag, we don't get involved unless that is made in a way that is dangerous to consumers. I think oftentimes when there are products that are stopped at the ports, it's actually interesting. CBP will take a look at a container and they will start flagging things for the appropriate federal agency. Sometimes they will look at, IPR violations, but at the same time may say this also looks dangerous and may not meet standards. Same thing with our folks too. If they're taking a look at something. There's a lot of collaboration across the different bureaus to be able to say, all right, you may want to take a look at this for other reasons. But that being said, I mean, to the extent you start talking about things like counterfeiting standards marks, that is inherently flags danger for those products. Because if you're talking about a extension cord that has a fake UL mark on it, then it probably wasn't tested to make sure that it is compliant, that the gauge of the wires is the correct, and the insulation is the correct thickness. So all of those are red flags for us that we will follow up on. But that's where we sort of make the distinction between if it's counterfeit for Gucci, maybe not. If it's counterfeit for your electric cord, then we'll probably be stopping that product. And I think in the end of the day, I said it partially in the world of the online because I know that counterfeits online has been a big issue for folks for decades at this point in time. And there's been a lot of back and forth about what their appropriate role is. I would just say that among the appropriate role, I think for them is to look at enforcing their terms and conditions overall and looking at safety as part of that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I can add on. I was so excited, so I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Lundin. I work for H&M, international retailer, so based in Stockholm, but we're operating in like more than 70 plus markets. But US is like one of our most important markets. So it's been really interesting also to compare the work that the CPSC does compared to the European Commission, where I'm involved mostly in the standardization in Europe, but also now starting to get more involved in ASTM standard development and comparing how the EU Commission is accessible to businesses, or if you have questions or anything like that, it's like almost non-existent. And I'm really impressed with how CPSC is really open. And it's like a friendly atmosphere. It's like you're not, it feels like you're really reaching out to businesses and to consumers in a totally different way than the Commission in Europe is doing. Because there it's more like, it's like a scary authority that you don't know who to contact. So it's really hard, even though I've been involved in standardization now for like 12 years, it still feels inaccessible, while the CPSC is kind of the complete opposite. I think that is really refreshing, and I'm really impressed with that work. So it feels not so scary anymore. It's like everyone working towards the same goal of just making products safer. It's like we're doing it together, and I really appreciate that feeling. So it's really nice to be, and also nice to be part of this program where we get even closer.
Well, thank you. I'm curious. Do you deal with different regulators? Obviously, from EC, it's uniform, but then oftentimes the enforcement is done on a country by country basis. Is that true in your case as well, or do you feel it's more done at a centralized level?
No, it's actually very much up to each individual country. Every country, I mean, even though it's like one, we all come together, but it still comes down to each authority. So, and each authority is doing in each country doing it totally different. They are looking at safety in different ways, even though we refer to exactly the same standards and the same regulations. It's still done in a little bit of different ways. So we have certain countries that are more strict or are looking at different things. So I think that is, I mean, maybe it's the same in the States, that it's a little bit different from state to state, but yeah, it's like both, but you have to handle each country separately, even though it's one unified European Union. So.
And from a business perspective, does that mean that you look at the most aggressive country and sort of make that the floor for the entire?
Yeah, I would say in the majority of the product types, I mean, we do tons of different product types. So that is like the main way we're doing it. But as more we get into the more difficult product types and more difficult markets, sometimes we do exceptions. I mean, there's big areas like we have the nightwear is quite different for the States from the European or for the rest of the world. So there are certain areas where we have to do distinctions. But the general thing is like following the strictest, because someone, I mean, if one country finds that this requirement should be the strictest, then that applies to all. I mean, I work mostly with kids wear, or kids products, but if someone found that it is dangerous, then they are probably ahead. So then we apply it for all. And also, of course, we want to be able to shift the products all around. So they have to be kind of generic, but trying to aim for the strictest.
Right. That's interesting. I'm not an expert in state law here, but obviously where the CPSC and the federal government have acted, then we have sort of a preemptive effect upon everybody where it's less, where there's less activity or less standards out there, then there's more flexibility. But I'd be curious from all the people here whether or not you think that the states are being aggressive in a way that's different from the federal government. I don't hear about it as much, although I've known individual cases, but I don't get the states. You have California out there that's always doing something with, more generally in environmental consumer protection generally, but I hear about less coming about specific product problems. But I don't know if you all have different expertise or different input, because I'd be curious to know.
Well, I would say that there are a few differences. Like when you look at cords and drawstrings, for instance, there are certain states and even that have different. So we have to make sure that we follow even the strictest, and also for some labeling. So you always have to be aware if a certain state have, a deviation, then you kind of have to follow that. So not only California, but they are the hardest ones.
Yeah, from my perspective, as the consultant, I think that we mostly see that in chemical, particularly in like children's chemicals. There are the 4 or 5 states that we have to pay specific attention to, and then those are the most strict kind of reporting and
Right, that's fair. Yep.
Yeah. And then the other thing is labeling, like Sarah mentioned. Like for example, bedding labels, law labels, we default to Utah. And I think Utah also just introduced that it has to be available online as well, or at least be made available to consumers after the fact. So there are some states that are, more stringent than others in that sort of way.
Yeah, and from our perspective, yes, we do see, as Kylie said, from a chemicals perspective, and as Sarah said, from a labeling perspective, we do see some differences. I think one unique challenge we have is our products interact with the home from an electricity and gas and plumbing perspective. And so we certainly see some building code related challenges that, that are unique and different. Some municipalities may implement rules differently than others. And so we have to deal with some things really at a local level occasionally. But from a product perspective itself, it's primarily chemicals and labeling. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Pointing out chemicals makes a lot of sense. Obviously, there's both activities we've been looking at with, OFRs and PFAS and things along those lines. But, our statute is written in a way that is a longer process for us, and states have been more active, and then more broadly across the EPA and how their statute's written in a much different way than CPSC's when it comes to chemical hazards.
Oh, one other thing, sorry, I just thought of as well is when you get into like recycled materials and, you know, I know Pennsylvania and Maine are working on, changing their legislation to allow recycled materials in plush toys, but that's another one where it's very state specific as well.
Yeah, and that's actually an interesting one when you start talking about Europe versus the United States as well, because I think I get that feeling in Europe there's uh, a much stronger push towards sort of recycling, reuse, which brings all sorts of safety issues into it as well. Um, I think we've seen cases in which like lithium-ion battery cells are being repackaged and resold, um, taken out of the country, repackaged as new, and sent back in, even though they're functionally reused cells, which have been creating a lot of risk in the process. So as we're getting towards that direction of saying, how do we, fundamentally, it's good to recycle, it's good to reuse, it's good to reduce the impact on the environment. But at the same time, from our perspective, how do you maintain the safety of those products? Similarly, as they're even talking about, we don't do cars, but the batteries in cars are being repurposed and reused for, houses, and being able to do home units using those batteries. What really is the lifespan? There's the efficiency decrease in the use of a vehicle battery after 10 years. So you're looking at like 80% or something along those lines. So people no longer feel that it's great to be used in a car, but it's still a decent battery. But is the battery still in a good enough shape? What are the risks associated with that? The fires that could start. So these are all things that we're looking at, starting to understand. But it is, we need the expertise of the industry as well to be able to really truly look at these issues. Similarly, when you start talking about, AI and machine learning as well, and we are seeing the shift in the marketplace as to the use of the products, and what do you do with a product that is different in your house and my house 6 months after it's been purchased, based off of the machine learning that it's doing. And one of them may create a hazard and one of them may not create a hazard. Where's the responsibility? How do you create the standards to be able to develop that in the first place? Again, this is where volunteer standards has been very useful. Our folks are talking to the folks out there to try and see what are the right standards, how do we track this, and is it really a safety risk? So we've seen a few, but I mean, it hasn't been a huge problem yet, but there have definitely been some products that end up being a problem in the sort of IoT machine learning world. But we'll see.
If there's time for one more question, in the past 5 years or so, I've been to a few forums, whether it's ICFSO or other things, where CPSC, along with the Canadian regulators and Mexican regulators, have established some relationships and partnership. Is that still going? Do you see that collaboration increasing or decreasing, or what's the current state of that?
It's still going on, definitely. And I think information sharing is increasing over time, figuring out ways to be able to let folks know about what we're seeing, get information from them. This is anecdotally, but I do see a lot of our recalls end up being coordinated with the Canadians as well. So it ends up coming out about the same time, similar remedies and all the rest. So there's ongoing discussions with them on those. And then there are areas where they may be more forward looking than we are. Like thinking like window blinds is a case in which the Canadians actually went before the CPSC did. We had a case, it was overturned. So window blinds is something that we're still working on, like the cords and being able to ensure prevent strangulations. So there is a bit of a back and forth in terms of what's happening in that marketplace. Is that creating problems in the market? Is it being effective? And then whether it's drawing those into our country or the reverse, Canadians often see what we're doing and then may update accordingly. They've been doing a lot more focus on the chemical side of things as well recently than we have, to be honest. And so we can watch what's happening over there. So I think there's a fair, we also tend to do what we haven't done it recently, trilaterals with the third countries as well. I think for just timing of different elections, it has been difficult to do recently. The last one was the Mexican election sort of shifted us off, but all that will continue. Now, go back to, I really appreciate both being here and also your interest in this area as well. I mean, you all have been literally working on this for many, many years and continuing to be able to focus. We do have an open door. We do have different parts as well. I mean, Nate was saying that he talks to our compliance folks, and unfortunately that happens at times, but we have our small business, we have our the standards work is done at a different portion of the agency. And then we have our people in the field who are both doing individual outreach in local communities. So, welcome the opportunity to work with you, to be able to push forward a safety message. And I know that there are two people from my office on this call right now. So it's easy to get a hold of me as well. I do thank you all for the opportunity and really enjoyed being able to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have exceeded expectations, and which were high. Not
I was going to say, it's you could start with low expectations so that you can clear the hurdle.
Well, we're big on tone and culture in our program, trying to understand what is going on and how can you make something happen? How do you communicate about it? Those are important pieces. But the tone of this session, I have to tell you, is, to me, it's a perfect model of a way to start a program like this. And we thank you for taking time and for sharing yourself and your thoughts. Believe me, this will have a positive effect on all the rest of the program. So thank you.
Hope everybody has a good day and all goes well. And Patty, go Hokies.
We're going to reconvene at 9:15 Eastern Time. And Don Moffat will talk to us about risk assessment and risk management. So we'll take a break now and see you in 15 minutes. Thank you.